Raining all the way to Scammell, then hailstones on the way back south, radio on, weather report said overcast next 24 hours with intermittent sunshine down to the coast. But we weren't hanging around and went through the tunnel and into France. The heat arriving south of Paris, and by evening we were near the viaduct in Nîmes, deep in memory of ancient Roman times in a modern land, stopping for fuel and fast relief. I turned to them as we slowed to avoid a truck changing lanes and said to them, "I need to tell you something." And they kept quiet, waiting for me to speak. It was 2013, June. The moon was high. We are headed south, to olive trees and palms, the Mediterranean coastline, summer nights in the garden, stars above, a zephyr wind gently breezing, scarcely moving the leaves. "The world has gone wrong," I said, and they looked at me in that way when given something they weren't sure about. A frown and a pout of the lips with an oscillation of the jaw, an expression which was them all over, a look that should be trademarked if such a thing were ever made possible. I loved that look, some of the time, not all of the time. I loved them, and I knew deep down it was one-way traffic, and I was waiting in vain. I turned the radio on, lowered the volume, and waited for the next weather report. "If," they said, "you mean us, then spit it out. Or do you mean the world in general, the experience of corruption? Or is this thing we are carrying stressing you out, this mission of yours, direct like the rays of the sun?" "Turnips," I replied, private between the two of us. The day we planted the turnip seeds and then watched them grow over the months. Remember the vegetables we grew? They weren't impressed, and it was a cheap shot, calling on sentiment to lively up the present. I tried again. "Or maybe we should wait till we get St Raphael." "St Raphael," they replied, and went into dream mode, looking to the right at fields and houses. We knew where we were going, and there was a shared thing there too. A not-so-good experience that trumped the experience of growing vegetables, which, like many others in our relationship, was defined by time. We had good experiences like that weekend in Ibiza. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, there was the bad experience of the Christmas day spent at their parents' house when we came under attack for just being who we are. These times had for a while brought us together, but they also fractured our fragile relationship. "I haven't forgotten, but we need to do this even though you..." "You what?" they interrupted. The tone not so good. Not angry, but with something of an accusation there which put me on the defensive because this suggested an end to happy times. The Sun King was dead. "We need to go over that again," they said. "Really? Do we have to?" I kept on driving, down to St Raphael. Kept quiet, tired of the road, of life and all of that. We needed to talk. Instead, I was left with my thoughts circling around and around and around. Love is born, grows, matures, and often dies, drowning in a swamp of familiar things, banality and exhaustion, barely lasting a season. Some love is eternal or resurrects like Jesus in the cross rolling away the boulder. "See that lake over there?" I say. A flock of geese have taken to the sky, rising in our direction, soaring like a plane over a field. But they aren't looking, better things to think about, though I have no idea what those thoughts may be. I feel sad because I would like to have shared that beautiful vision of a lake and geese in flight. There was something Buddhist in the perfect beauty of that moment. Not up for discussion, that the happening, us and where we were going, the future. "The lake?" they asked after a while, but we had gone past the lake, now doing 80 in a clear lane, and the scenery was whipping past. I was driving, the one who could not linger on the things seen, holding onto a steering wheel, checking the rear view and two side mirrors. A steady 70 mph going up to 80 when the road was clear. A left-sided vehicle in a right-sided country where a moment of inattentive distraction could result in death. "The evening is coming," I said after a period of silence. "Yeah," they said, "it's getting dark. We should stop and get something to eat. It will be late before we get there." I thought of our mission, the ashes on their way home to his beloved villa in St Raphael after a life lived well but carelessly. His words, not mine, spoken a week ago. He was resigned to depart this world. "If you live long enough," he said, "you see the inevitability of it, and it's the way it should be." "Resistance is futile," I had joked. "Resist everything but that," he said. His voice was weak, and now he was ashes in an urn in the back seat of a BMW headed home. We left the motorway. Found a nice cozy restaurant like they do well in France, good cooking. They had a carafe of red, but I was driving. "It will all be clearer in the morning," I said as we hit the road. The sat-nav said 2 hours to go. We sprinkled his ashes around the olive tree the following morning, said to have been planted in the age of Napoleon, and outlived 5 generations, and would most likely all of us. Should we have said a prayer? If so, to what? God was dead, as we knew him. The male archetype, the creator of the universe. We hadn't yet agreed on a replacement primeval force that explains everything. Don't me ask me, they said. I'm an atheist, so you believe in not believing? We were walking back to the house. It would be sold after the will had been finalized, and that could take years. He said the villa was now mine. Or maybe I would keep it and become a Frenchman. Ooh la la, monsieur. The villa needs a lot of work done. After the acting work dried up, he couldn't afford much upkeep or repairs, but it was all paid for. And the TV residuals had covered property taxes and his red wine and dinners in the garden. That and panto season, because he never lost the gift of making people laugh right to the end. Marie Claire, the neighbor, came round with his cat, which he left with her when he was back in England. It was more a shared ownership lately, as he hadn't been able to make it down to his villa much as his condition worsened. And then the hospice. I don't think the cat's in his will, I joked. It must have been my bad French because she frowned. Le chat, I said, stroking the cat. Bonjour, petit chat. Them and I walked into St Raphael, down the narrow, winding road bordered by old stone walls, bright yellow mimosa, Aleppo pine trees, and holm oaks, lavender and rosemary in the air. We need to talk, I said, but once again we avoided talking what was really in our minds, what needed to be acknowledged. A beautiful view of the Mediterranean lay before us. I made up for my long drive by ordering a bottle of red. The silence between us continued until it became unbearable. I have a friend in Monaco, they said. I'm thinking of going there. It's not far, I said. We can be there in possibly half an hour, depending on traffic, maybe an hour. They looked out to sea, uncertain. I'm thinking of going on my own. Was that thinking or planning too, I wondered? And how long? I knew then that nothing more needed to be spoken. It was good of you to come all this way with me. You didn't need to. We rolled back to the villa where I laid down on an old rattan sofa on the veranda and dozed off. Later, when I woke up, they had gone. Suitcase and all, as if they had never been there. The season was over. I've never seen them again. Not even heard their name mentioned. They may be out there on social media, everyone is. Resistance is futile. Marie Claire came round again in the evening to see if I needed anything. Nice of her. He always said she was a good un. I told her I'm thinking of staying here for a while. I might even move down and live here permanently. Bon, she replied. I could tell she was a good and sincere woman, and had lived a long life with her own failures and disappointments. How about we share the cat as before, I suggested. We looked at a picture of him on stage at the Prince Charles in Leicester Square, in his prime, in black and white, way back when, making them laugh. Pauvre Monsieur Gilles, she said. I felt a void where emotion should be. A tear rolled down my cheek. Pauvre papa. I wondered for a moment if I was crying for him or myself. It was June and the stars were bright. They had gone further on down the road and was not coming back, and we didn't need to talk anymore. Thank you for watching. If you like what you have seen, please click on the subscribe button. And you can find more books in the Imaginopedia project by following the link in the description. Please comment and let us know how you feel.